Progress.
Progress. Okay.
Behind progress.
Graham Peterson has had to pick up the pieces of the accident. A veteran tunnel engineer from London, his job is to rebuild the old nickel highway station. And he's having to do it in Singapore's mucky soil, a major factor in the collapse.
Famous marine clay. It's beautiful stuff for making putty, but you put any pressure on it and it just does that. Black toothpaste has been described to me. So consequently, when it comes to tunneling medium, it's not very good. It needs constant support, just like the fluid.
Original station is just fronting Concourse building, which is that building.
Graham and his team are having to rebuild the station 100 meters from the collapsed area and bore a whole new set of tunnels.
And the rough alignment of the bored tunnels, they start from here.
So we've now pulled the tunnels further to the south.
That's
and
right.
you can see the station is now slightly further away from the buildings.
It's about 100 meters to the south.
Yeah. And then we got a very tight bend at the far end. It was decided it's easier, safer, certainly safer, to abandon it all. It's a bit of a shame. Two perfectly good tunnels abandoned. Throw them away.
The old nickel highway station has now been almost completely covered over. Across the road, they've started building a new station. Its supporting walls will be thicker, and the station will be dug deeper, all to avoid the disaster of 2004. The Japanese crane operator keeps a fish hanging in his window, a symbol of good luck. A few kilometers away, Graham and his team are dealing with another setback. A condominium building called Hawkey House. It sits right next to where they are excavating one of the new stations.
There's about 18 to 20 meters thick of marine clay underneath this building. So all three consultants agreed that if we proceeded with the excavation, the building would be in the danger. So the decision that was taken was that we would acquire the building because paramount would be the safety of the people living there.
So, they've started tearing it down. Once it's demolished, they can start the excavation work again.
It's good to see the progress on this now. I mean, in about a few weeks we get this down?
Yeah, it's very good progress. Very soon we can start excavation.
Yeah, that's the key point. As soon as this is down, within the next, 4 or 5 weeks, we can get going on doing some work outside, getting on with the real work.
Yeah.
This is
after a long wait, isn't it?
After a very long wait.
Yeah.
A very long wait, yeah.
Their obstacle is now being removed. But for the 35 residents and 7 shopkeepers of this building, they've lost their homes. Singapore is one of the most urbanized places on Earth. Expanding its subway system underneath all this humanity is an almost impossible task. Sometimes it means knocking down buildings. This condominium was in serious danger of a collapse with construction work going on right next door. 35 people lost their homes and many businesses were razed to the ground. Mr. Tan Po Heon was the very first resident to move into the condo building in 1965. He now lives with his grandson above the family t-shirt store.
The day he knows that we are moving off from the building, he don't know how to say a word. He's really, really heartbroken. And he was sitting there, staring at the wall, looking here and there. He lost the contacts, he lost the friends, he lost everything. It's very, very sad.
This is sometimes the human cost of tunneling, disturbing life above. But there's one place on Earth where destroying buildings to expand a subway line is strictly forbidden. Historic Amsterdam. Many of its buildings date back to the 17th century. It was one of the richest cities in the world. Soon, they will be boring a tunnel underneath the city in soil softer than Singapore's. And the challenge is, not one of these ancient buildings can be touched. No one is more sensitive about this than the Vice Mayor of Amsterdam, Mark van der Horst.
It's very, very important for everybody who lives here that the city is kept as the way it is. Because all these historical buildings, it just feels deep in your heart. If you touch it with one finger, people get angry. And I think they're right.
When the city put in its subway line 30 years ago, it was impossible to use a tunnel boring machine. Technology had not advanced far enough to needle through such soupy soil. So they dug the old-fashioned way, ripping open the streets and destroying buildings along their path. Not a popular move in this medieval city. Tensions mounted as homeowners of the condemned buildings formed human barricades.
It built up, and then suddenly it came to a burst.
It was March 24, 1975. Police arrived with tear gas and armored cars to force people out of their houses. By the end of the day, 30 people were injured and many more arrested. Only a few left the easy way. It was one of the worst riots in Amsterdam's history.
That was actually the start of 2 decades of, let's say, metrophobia. Even the word metro line, as we call it here in Amsterdam, was more or less forbidden.
All plans for expanding their metro system were put on hold. But today, the congestion in the historic heart of Amsterdam has only gotten worse. There is simply no more room on the streets for extra trams or buses.
If you want to improve the public transportation system, you have to go underground. And that's why we're making the north-south subway right to the heart of the city center from north to south.
The city has finally greenlit a plan that's been on hold for 30 years. 3 kilometers of the route will run through the most historic part of the city center. The deal this time is that not one of the 1,500 buildings can be demolished. In the spongy soil of Amsterdam, that's an almost impossible task.
It's like flying to the moon by riding a bicycle. I think it's the best description if you look at Amsterdam. It's impossible, but still we're doing it.
They've passed that impossible task on to a handful of experienced engineers.
And this is the last excavation.
This is the video. This is the Bijenkorf building.
Can you stop there?
Oh, yes, I can.
These men are virtual tunneling before the real work begins. They use computer models to predict the exact effects the tunnel machine will have on the historic buildings. These predictions are critical for the success of this project.
That building is all red because it's in the inside of the curvature. The system tells us that we need to be very careful at that spot.
It's a challenging tunneling route with tight corners and narrow streets. Disturb the wood foundations that these buildings sit on, and they could sink in an instant.
What we're actually doing, we're driving a tunnel under the city, and we're almost tickling the pile toes where all the buildings are founded on. And this specific engineering topic hasn't been dealt with in the past.
There are museums, embassies, and even the royal palace at stake. A lot is resting on the virtual tunneling predictions.
So it's the best we can do at the moment. There's no reference in the world for a project like this. So at a certain time you have to start. When there's no guts, there's no glory.